All right. So welcome to today's session, and I'll hand it over to Christy for a minute.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's always nice to come back together after being away for a month, and we're looking forward to hearing what you've maybe tried out since the last meeting, as well as share some new information this week. So welcome back. Today we are looking at, so similar to last time, we'll do a couple of review items about what we talked about last time, which was all about student motivation. And then we will share a little bit from our homework reading. We will talk about some multiple opportunities, ways of doing that, and then we'll go into our breakout groups, new breakout groups today. And we'll do a problem of practice protocol around any issues that we've had with multiple opportunities. Here we are in April, hence the star, and then we've got one in May and one more in June. So next time, talking about shifting the grading paradigm. So how can we start moving our team, our department, our school, whatever it is, small steps, right, towards a more equitable grading practices. And then in June, we want to start talking about maybe what next year could look like. Do we want to continue this? What are some other options? What are ways that we can continue to grow our practices?
So today as our agenda, we're going to have our final thoughts on student motivation. We're going to debrief the homework because you guys said that you preferred it if we gave you our thoughts so that we could have a little bit more time to give you some ideas. Then we're going to go through what multiple opportunities could look like in various contexts and various ways. And then we'll do that standard protocol and problem of practice of how you've experienced multiple opportunities and how that's worked or not worked for you, so you guys can work together on how to make it work better. So once again, our community norms stay the same. So stay respectful of each other, share space, support and encourage each other. Make sure that we honor equities and all the ideas are good so we can share and learn from people, and that we're a community together. So we're learning together, we're working toward a common goal, we're asking questions and listening to each other. So last time we talked about student motivation and just some final comments about it. There is sadly no magic bullet. I wish there was for student motivation. But you just got to keep trying different methods to see what works for you and your context. So work on building relationships, help students connect learning to their lives with different kinds of phenomena. Explicitly show them how the assignments build towards mastery. So maybe you do a pre-assessment and you say, like, if these are the pieces that you're struggling with, this is when we cover them. Show examples and non-examples of what mastery can look like. Help students figure out why mastery matters to them. I need to know chemistry for this reason. How does this affect my life? How will it keep me alive? Exactly. Teach students how to self-assess and use that to help themselves get better. That's a lifelong skill. And give lots of feedback and teach them how to use that feedback in meaningful ways so that it's not just like, I'm not telling you you're a bad person. I'm telling you how to get better. And listen to their stories. So if you still have students who are struggling with motivation, start asking them questions about, tell me about a time when you really wanted to learn something, or when you were really excited and maybe it was how to shoot free throws, or maybe it was how to write fancy letters, or maybe it was, how to play some piece of music. But listen to their stories about when it did work for them, and see if there's some clues there for how it might work for you to help them as well. So key points from the readings. The first reading was allowing test retakes without getting gamed. And I thought this reading was really good for tips and tricks to make retaking tests work for you. So this is a lot of what people think of as retakes is tests. So make reflective test corrections, use metacognition, and that's sort of like at the end, have them report out how comfortable they're feeling about it and what additional things they might need. Notify parents of retakes. Require additional work for a retake form, But please bear in mind that retakes are not the only way that we do redos. It's a great article to revisit when you're feeling overwhelmed by retakes and want to think of some new ideas or some better ways to do things. So I like to go back at if I'm trying to think of, okay, these are some ways I'm doing them, and our department has decided that test retakes is one of the methods. What else can I do to make this less work for us? The other one is redos and retakes done right. And this is sort of a motivational article on why we do retakes and redos. So if you're feeling like, oh, I can't do this, why do you want to keep redoing retakes and redos? It's acknowledging that we all learn in different paces and some folks need extra practice. So it also helps for trying to talk to some of your colleagues. Like if you work in a department and there's one person who says it's not fair, maybe it's good to kind of bring that article out to help you talk to them about the process of retakes and redos and how it better supports students. So that's what the purpose of those two articles was. So today we're going to be talking about, before I go on, are there any more questions or thoughts about this that anyone wants to add before I move on to our topic for today? Multiple opportunities. We're going to talk about today about why we give multiple opportunities and how we do it in some different ways that you may not have thought of. So one of the reasons why we offer multiple opportunities, and that was in that second article, is these students learn at different rates. Everybody learns at different rates, and they're motivated to learn if they have an opportunity to succeed. And if I didn't learn as fast as you learned, I still want to be able to be successful. So those retakes and those redos allow them to still achieve success, even if maybe they didn't pick up one topic as fast as everyone else, because everybody's got their topic that they're going to pick up quickly. It offers some control and agency over learning, so they can kind of say, I want to learn this and I'm going to get there. It also keeps communication about progress towards the goal transparent. So they can say, I'm almost there. I've learned 3 of the 4 topics. I've learned 4 of the 4 topics, so that they can see themselves progressively get better. There are different ways to do multiple opportunities, and we're going to give you examples of these in a minute. And I think Christy's going to walk through a bunch of those. So one of them is building additional checks into future assignments. This is one great way to do it where you're not offering, hey, let's just do test retakes, right? This is building it in so that it's not extra work for you. And there's a chemistry and a math example we're going to give you on that. Evaluating students using different methods. We're going to show a social studies example on that, but it still works for science as well. Allow students to try using a similar assessment. That's that retake a thing. And then embedding revision. That's in art and language arts. We're going to show all of those in a minute. All right, to you, Christy.
So when Andrea and I were putting these slides together, we had a lot of really good conversations about multiple opportunities and what does that mean and what does that look like? And because when people hear those words, multiple opportunities, they often immediately go to test retakes. And you'll see that I put that on the slide as the second bullet. And we did do a little homework reading about it. There is some in grading for equity. There's the pages right there. But our next series of slides, I'm not going to focus on that part. And I just want to share why that is. So I have gone down the road of retakes myself in my chemistry classroom. And I tried it for a year or 2, and I am just not sold on it. This is just Christy talking right now. This is my personal opinion. It's an insane amount of work for a teacher to write multiple versions of a test, to have additional, seat time so that kids can take a test, additional grading. Like, it's not sustainable, or it's not for me. I'll put it that way. I bet there's people out there in the world who have mastered retakes, or maybe even you've tried some things and you've found some success with some models that you love. And I hope you will share them today in your small group. The things that I want to share are ways that we can work multiple opportunities into things that we're already planning on doing. It's not additional work. It's already built into our curriculum and our unit plans. And we're going to hit it later on down the road. And it's another chance for me to see, what does the kid know about this topic? And for me, this is really a seamless and beautiful way to get that extra evidence without causing me extra work, extra time, extra grading, because as teachers, you know, we don't have those things. We don't have the luxury of those things. So I would like to walk through some examples here. And you can see it's not an exhaustive list, right? I had to shoulder tap some colleagues and get some examples. So these are the ones that I was able to come up with. Of course, we're all science in here, but I think as we go through these slides, I want you to be thinking about, okay, I don't teach language arts, but I could use that part in my classroom, and in science, it would look like this. So try to take the technique or what the teachers are doing in these examples and try to think about, can that work in my classroom?
I want to add one note. After I last talked to Christy about this, I had a chance to talk to some math teachers in a recent meeting, and we talked about the building it in. And some students feel like it's more authentic to retake where it's built in than just doing a test retake. They then focus more, some of them will focus more on learning rather than what do I need to do to pass this test and never think about it again. It reinforces the idea that learning is a progression that we continue doing, and that knowledge that we gain sticks with us and we use it in the future. So I just want to add that in, that I didn't realize that when I talked that to Christy last, but I think that's a really important point. So let's go ahead and go on to some of these examples.
Okay, so here's our social science example. So this is an example of the class is doing something called a culture project, excuse me. And if you click on the assignment, it opens, this is just like a screenshot of part of it. But if you click on it, it takes you to the whole assignment, so you can see the whole thing. But as you can see in the format column, there's lots of different options for students to choose from. So let's say the first time I do this, I like to write, so I'm going to choose the personal essay. I make my initial choice for how I want to demonstrate my understanding. I complete it and I turn it in. And if the feedback I get, when I get it back, if the feedback there, if I don't love it, or I feel like I've done additional learning since I've submitted it, or I didn't frame it the way that I know that I understand, what I can do is I can go back to the project and I can choose a different format for submitting it. So this time I want to do a poster. I'm thinking of some other, these are all writing and essays that are showing here, but if you go further down on the assignment, maybe I want to do an annotated diagram or something that shows what I understand about cultural project. So I'm doing the project again, but now it's in a different format. So I'm making my best effort to show my learning, but in a different way. Okay. If we're working with our SPED students, we know that our SPED students, they all have individualized learning goals, right? As part of their individualized education program, their IEP. And so, for example, this student named Blue is working on a reading goal. So he's going to demonstrate writing skill, improved writing skills, presumably that goes with reading, by meeting some short-term objectives. So let's say I have a room with a few SPED students. How am I going to modify what I'm doing to try to address the different accommodations that students have? So here's an idea. So I'm going to put my students into groups based on their needs. So if I know that these 3 students or these 4 students need to work on their writing, for example, I would put them together in a group. Can you go back one slide, please? Then I'm going to do some modeling of what I want them to work on. So like, let's say we're looking at some informational text. I'm going to model what we're working on. They're going to practice it and they're going to talk to each other. There's some discourse strategies for students to use. They're going to talk to each other about what they're learning. I'm going to be able to give them some feedback as I walk around and look at what they're writing. And then I'm going to have them either bring some work of their own or to work on, or maybe even better, I have one assignment that I'm going to differentiate to meet the needs of all the kids at the table. So now if we advance the slide, we have a visual to go with it. So all these kids are working on a goal around writing. They have the same assignment in front of them, same activity for all, but look, they're all working on different things. So one's working on organization of ideas, one's working on transition, one's working on sentence fluency, and the other's working on summarizing. Okay, so I'm providing one model. I don't have to go out and look for 4 different things to try to meet the needs of the kids. I'm going to pick one thing, and then I'm going to adjust what I'm looking for each student. So it gives them a chance to get some feedback. They see me modeling some examples and some non-examples. And then they are collaborating together and talking about it. And then they're going and doing their own individual work. All right.
Right. And so I'm going to go and talk about like what this might look like in a science classroom. So you can build additional opportunities into future assignments. So for example, if I'm looking at this ALT1 standard, right, it's about predicting products. Well, it's in this balancing reactions assignment. It's also in this types of reactions assignment. It's also in this solubility assignment. It's also in this beaker model. So if they don't understand it quite here, I can look at how they did it here. I can look at it how they did it here. I can look at it how they did it in all these different assignments so that I can eventually say, yes, they have the evidence that they need in order to demonstrate that they've done it. And you can even highlight it to say, it looks like I haven't seen, I know you know how to do this, but it looks like I haven't seen any evidence that, can you, so on this next assignment, this one about chemical and physical change, do you mind making sure that you show me that as a part of that assignment? And then they can put that in there because they finally have figured out how to add it.
Can I add something here?
Absolutely.
This is, so when I'm thinking about, I know we all have different kind of learning targets for our district. So when I'm thinking about the learning targets in my district, ALT 5, 6, and 7, 5 is about chemical reactions. And when I think about chemical reactions, and I think about all the pieces that go into chemical reactions, I start listing them off. Well, we have to balance reactions. We have to know what kinds of reactions they are. We have to know if things dissolve or not. We got to be able to draw a model, etc. Like all of these things, all of the check marks in the ALT 5 row, those are all the things that we're going to be looking at in that unit. But if I don't, like Andrea said, if I don't get balancing reactions in unit 5, well, you know what? We're going to see it again in unit 6, and we're going to see it again in unit 7. So if I introduce it in March, but they don't get it till April, I don't care, right? The goal is that they get it. So, this is all in the same semester, right? So finally, when they get balancing reactions, I go back to the grade book and I make an adjustment of their grade for that portion. Same with type, same with solubility, etc. So this is, thinking about our science example, the one that's most relevant to us right now. This is a great example of how things are built into what I'm already planning on doing, right? I'm already planning on next teaching a stoichiometry unit. And we all know in order to be able to do a correct computation in stoichiometry, I have to know how to balance reactions, right? So built in already, there's another way to check. No extra work on my part, right? Already built in. Okay.
Here's our math example. And I know that our math curriculum, it sort of spirals through so that you are constantly sort of looking at the curriculum in different ways. So let's say today they learned about transformations of an equation. Well, if they got it today and they showed it on the board, you can mark down, hey, they've gotten it, but they're going to come back to it again in a few more days to get the same idea. So this, like, the curriculum spirals through these different parts, and then they can do it just by the way that the curriculum is written. And I'm sure from Christy's face, she's going to add more to this too. Yeah.
By my face, that's not good. Let's see. The only thing I would add are the P's and C's and R's. So at the bottom there, you see the first couple of chapters. We're going to do a bunch of practice. It's almost like the formative part. Whatever it is I'm assessing communicates clearly and explains my reasoning. So we're going to be practicing that a bunch in the early chapters. Then I'm going to assess it for real in chapter 4. And then every chapter after number 4, we are going to be communicating clearly and explaining our reasoning. So look at all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more opportunities for students to continue to improve and show their improvement in their ability to communicate and explain. So this is also a really great way of building it in to what I'm already planning on doing. We're already going to go through chapter 10 or whatever it is. And I can reassess, and students can show me again and again their increase in their learning as we go.
Oh no, but I thought I could stop communicating clearly and explaining my reasoning after chapter 4. That's no fair.
That's when the assessment was. I don't need to
That's
talk about it
right.
anymore, right?
Right. And I don't know about you, Christy, but I do know that I've had students who felt like, well, if I keep retaking the test, that means I never have to see it again. And clearly, you're never going to, you need to use these skills for the rest of the course and maybe beyond. Back to you. Oh, but no, it's me. Embedded revisions. So one way to do it is to kind of look at getting student involved in the process. So you hand out an assignment and you explain, hey, this is what we're doing. And then you co-create, like, what does it mean to be good at this assignment? Some ways that you can co-create is you can show examples of it done well and examples of it done poorly and say, what does it mean to be doing well? So you co-create, what does proficient mean? And then they try it, right? They do their first attempts and they can provide feedback to each other because they know what the criteria is. They help to make the criteria. They know what good and bad looks like. And then once they get that feedback, they can revise. So each one of these is an opportunity for them to get it and to master it. And then they can self-assess themselves. Did I get it to mastery? Or did I just miss that there? Like, did I miss the criteria there? Was I forgetting this one piece? And they revise again. And then you give feedback and they choose whether to revise again. And this is great because it trains students for how to own their own learning to the point where they can do it right the first time when they get to college or some place where they don't have as many multiple opportunities, because they learn, how do I create my own criteria? How do I get feedback from my peers? How do I self-assess against that rubric to make sure I'm going to get the grade that I want without needing the teacher to tell me I didn't do it good?
Yeah, if I could just add on, I totally 100% agree with what Andrea said. Sometimes the pushback, and I think we're going to get to this in future slides, but sometimes the pushback to multiple opportunities is we got to prepare students for the real world. Like, they're just not going to get multiple opportunities in college. So first of all, I want to say the tide is changing on that. We are seeing more and more professors making adjustments like that. And we're hearing that anecdotally from our colleagues' own children who are off to college and sort of reporting back. I also want to encourage us to remember that we have children right now and like developmentally where they are in terms of their learning process and their kind of higher order functioning. So there's that to keep in mind. And finally, I would say one of our important jobs as teachers, as we have students who are preparing to go off to college, is we need to teach them how to build in their own opportunities for feedback and reflection, because they may very well have a class where the professor's like, nope, it's this one deadline and you got nothing after that. You know, your whole grade is based on these 2 papers or something something like that, right? So, okay, I know I have a deadline coming up. How can I do like self-checks along the way to make sure that when I submit my final draft, it is exactly where I want it to be? And I know what the criteria is, and I know where my work falls on that learning progression. That's part of our job, is to help students build in, just like it says here, student involvement in the process. How do they do that as they are getting ready to leave us and go on to higher ed?
Because at some point they won't have us anymore, right? At some point. And, so one of those arguments that people often bring up is about, multiple opportunities, is like, well, you don't want that person who's doing your surgery to have a multiple opportunities. They only have one chance. But when they demonstrated mastery before they were allowed to do it, and I do want them to constantly get feedback from peers and self-assess so that they get better at it, right? I want them to be the best surgeon they can possibly be when they work on me, and an even better surgeon if they have to work on my children, right? I want them to constantly grow.
And they 100% had multiple opportunities leading up to that final surgery, right? Or that mastery. Now I'm ready to operate on people. You bet they had lots of opportunities, and they got lots of feedback too, right? So we were very hard pressed to think of any occupation where you don't have multiple chances at something. And there may be multiple chances for some examples, but there's a cost to that. It's called an opportunity cost, right? So for like a test retake, if a teacher is doing a test retake, yeah, you can do a test retake, but there's an opportunity cost. And that is, whatever you lay out, you need to do these homework assignments, you need to come in during these study hall times, you need to, whatever it is, that's the opportunity cost. So it's not like students are getting away with something, right? They're still needing to put in the time and the effort. It's just they have another chance to show you.
And that matches the real world really well, because if you think about it, you can take the LSAT as many times as you want to, but you got to pay like $200 every time, right? There's an opportunity cost to it every single time, right?
And then we have a language arts example. So over the course of the year, we're going to be writing 3 papers. We're going to be writing a narrative, an argumentative paper, and an informational paper. And while maybe the content of each of those, is different, what is similar among them is what's on the left there. I can assess for organization, elaboration, conventions, knowledge of language, craft, like all of those skills I'm going to be using when I put an essay together. No matter what the topic is, I'm going to be using all of those skills each time. So I can reevaluate for any of those skills at any time throughout the year when I have a new essay assignment. So if you look at the strategies link, and I think if you just go to the next slide, it shows us how can I manage giving so much feedback in class. So one thing about language arts teachers, they have an insane amount of reading and feedback and reading papers, like it's so much, right? And so here's a couple of ways, a couple of strategies that you could use with your kids. So for example, teacher directions, after you finish your first paragraph, take a picture and submit it to Canvas. So then the teacher can do a quick read. You could do Canvas, you could even do formative. You could even have them submitted in formative, and then you could pull them all up on the screen at once, and you could do just a quick read through and highlight like, ooh, these 5 people, I need to get them together and talk about, transitions or whatever. So I've identified them right away. Another way, the kids are writing, and you could say, highlight your favorite line of dialogue in your writing. And then the teacher walks around and looks at the favorite line they've highlighted. And then if I'm seeing some consistent problems, I'm going to circle the kids on my seating chart. Maybe I've got it right here on my clipboard. I'm going to circle the kids on the seating chart like, ooh, I need to group these 5 together. We need to talk a little bit about dialogue. They're not quite getting it. So I can give them some real-time feedback that's quick Like, it didn't take me a bunch of time to figure out who those 5 kids were, and I could see right away what they needed from me. And so these are both some quick ways that you can scan some feedback and get it back to them in real time.
I want to add something to that, and that is, I was listening to the Third Rail podcast about, and there's an English teacher that's here, and he does the whole, hey, I'm going to give you feedback, but use it on your next essay, because he found that if I make you rewrite this current essay, you just focus on the things I told you to do, and you never remember to do them on the next one. So I just keep telling you to do the same things over and over again. But if I give you feedback now, and I say, fix it on your next essay, then they internalize it and they're rewriting it on the next essay, and it's less work for him and deeper learning for them. All right, so if you are going to do retakes that are like the test retake variety, here's a few things that people say helps make them work. So a retake form, that's this part of this opportunity cost. So like, what learning do I need to work on? What have I done to understand the concepts, right? So that they have to acknowledge, what am I doing that I need to work on? What have I done to do something different this time? Schedule retakes and redo times. So the test retake times are available at this one time. They're not always available, but they're available, these times, and I control that for when I have time. It also allows you, if you're doing like a test retake, to say, hey, you're going to do the test retakes this week, and I'll do the test retakes next week, so that you can have them sort of scheduled around ways that work for you. Put time limits on assignments, but not on learning. So like, it doesn't make sense to turn in a 4-month-old lab. Have them do something recent that shows they're learning on it in a current lab, because if they're turning in a 4-month-old lab, they just copied it from someone else. I have yet to have anybody turn in a 4-month-old lab and really be able to know what's going on. And apply it to the next assignment. That's what I was talking to about what that English teacher is doing here in PPS. They were just like, hey, fix this on your next assignment. If you, all year long, students are writing claim evidence reasoning conclusions to their lab reports. If they left out the data this time, don't make them just put the data in. Say, next time you need to have, you've included a good claim, you included some, good reasoning, but you left out your data. It needs to be part of there, because people aren't going to go back and look at that. So just give them a reason for it. And then back to something that we've kind of touched on several times about the pushback to multiple opportunities. I'll try to make my computer not just jump ahead a slide.
Andrea, can I pause you just for a second? There's a question in the chat box. So would you still allow late work to demonstrate proficiency, or just make a new opportunity available?
In the past, I have let them turn in Unit 1 stuff at the end of the semester, and that has not been super productive. Moving forward, I would instead say, you need to demonstrate this on a newer assignment. If you didn't get it, you can still learn it, you can still demonstrate it, but here, do this new lab, or do this new experience, or show me what's going on with the molecules moving around as we heat them up before they bond, or something, so that it's on a recent activity that they remember, versus like something that they can't even recall themselves. Because I was finding that when I was having them turn in stuff from Unit 1, I was like, do you even remember this lab? And they never did. They never did.
Taylor says, we cut it off at the end of the unit. End of unit assignments have a little more wiggle room.
Yeah, as long as you're still giving them an opportunity to demonstrate that they learn it, or to learn it, they don't have to turn in old stuff.
Well, and I think as teachers, we have to draw the line somewhere, right? Whether that be at the end of the semester or the end of the unit, or whatever it is, we want to give them some time to demonstrate again, but we don't want that to go on and on and on and on. I mean, just like logistically, that's difficult. And as Andrea said, we've kind of moved on from that learning. We've built on to that learning, and there's other ways or other times that we can demonstrate that learning.
And we need to shift our focus from completing assignments to doing learning. So they didn't complete that assignment right. But it doesn't mean that they need to complete that assignment to do the learning. They need to demonstrate the learning. That's more important than the specific details of the KMT lab or the specific details of the build an atom lab. We want them to know the idea, not the piece of paper. So some of the pushback that you get about multiple opportunities, we've touched on this a bit already. It doesn't prepare people for the real world. You know, once again, there are multiple opportunities available in the real world, and they have to demonstrate proficiency before they're allowed to do these things. I just had a friend of mine had to retake and demonstrate that they could do their architecture exam, right? They had to keep retaking that until they could pass it before they perform architecture. My friend who's a lawyer had to pass the bar exam, and she might have had to take a couple different times, right? But each time she had to pay for it. Students won't try the first time if they have another chance, and it's that opportunity cost that gives them that other chance. And Dustin says that if that opportunity cost is too high, students don't take you up on it, right? So that's where building it back into the opportunity cost to retake a test might be too high. But if there's already an opportunity built into an assignment that you're already doing, it lowers the barrier to actually doing it. You just have to learn it for the next assignment. You don't have to learn to retake the test. So that opportunity cost is lower if it's already built into some of those future assignments, and then they know they have to do it right the next time anyway, because it keeps coming back. And then there's this one thing that kind of comes up for people that's a very emotional response, and that is it's not fair for the students who do it right the first time. But it turns out that it's like not really fair. Not everybody learns at the same rate, and it's kind of unfair to punish people for the rate that they learn. Oftentimes those students who do it the right the first time have either previously had a teacher that taught them how to reassess their own work, that taught them how to get feedback from peers, that taught them how to read a rubric to know what they were doing, so they could be their own guide, or they have a bunch of prior knowledge coming into it because their family sent them to OMSI science camp over the summer, and they've already done half of the activity and they already know what the answers are. So it's not fair sometimes to demand that they learn it at the rate that you want them to learn it at. It's fair to give them an opportunity to learn it and to support them in their learning.
I think right in line with this one is students can retake it, but they can't get higher than a B. I've heard that too. Like a teacher will limit the potential of the retake, because if they studied harder the first time, then they would have done better. And, you know, again, I just keep coming back to what is the goal of our teaching kids, right? We want kids to learn. And if they learn the first time or the fifth time in a month, a week, 2 months, like, does it matter, right? If the goal is the learning, does it matter when that happens? And why do we limit them or punish them for eventually getting there? Because we want them all to get there, right? So, I mean, talk about motivation, right? I don't think a kid's going to be motivated to put in that extra time and that energy and that effort to sit with you and really understand if they're going to be limited in their score. I just haven't seen a compelling reason yet for that, although I do see some things in the chat box. I'm going to read those.
Yeah.
Let's see. The issue I've had with having no opportunity cost assessments built in isn't that it's not fair, it's that students tend to procrastinate putting that time in to the point it becomes overwhelming and then shut down. 100%. Right? This is part of their learning to learn, right? And understanding that, I mean, my gosh, I work on this with my own children. We know there's a test coming up next week. How can we break this into chunks and do a little bit every day so that we're ready next time? I mean, I think we're teaching that to our students too. So yes, I see that too. in my classroom. And it's just part of that relationship building that I have with them and conversations that I have, like, see how this didn't really work out? How can we do it differently next time? And next time is in the next unit. I'm not going to write another test, right? We're going to see this again in the next unit, and then you're going to do your very best. And I know you can do it. Something like that.
And it feels good. I mean, one of the things you can also kind of talk to the students about is it feels good when you knock some of your to-do list down. Like if you have 100 things to do that you've got to pass, it's kind of overwhelming and it's hard to do. But every time you get one of them, it's less. And it feels good to break that list down. So break it down into small pieces and do one chunk at a time. And they have to, I mean, that's a thing you kind of have to teach them and go over with them multiple times. Some of them, just like learning anything, some of them will get it right away. And some of them it'll have to be, okay, we did this again. Let's make a list. Let's try a different way of making a list so that you can knock those things out one at a time and get things where you need to be. All right, Christy.
All right, so we have new breakout groups today. When we looked at the feedback from last time, we got a range of comments from, I'm ready for a new group, to I love my group and I'm so excited to see them each week. So we always have the full gamut, right? So we thought we've been with these groups for a few months. Now let's shift it up for the last couple of months. So please find you on this list, and you're probably in a different group number. So please note what the group number is, because we're going to be going to breakout rooms here in a minute. And we'll come back to this slide just before we go to breakout rooms. Okay, so we're doing our standard protocol. Okay, Pam, hang with us just for a second and we'll get you situated as soon as we open breakout rooms. Same protocol as always. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We have one person who is presenting and providing their dilemma. People are listening and asking clarifying questions. We also have one person that's the facilitator that's keeping track of the time and transitioning us. Remember the power of this protocol. It's my favorite part because you really get to dig into something that a teacher is experiencing and how can we kind of be problem solvers together. So thinking about the steps, and then, do we have a next slide? And then we'll come back at the end, or even if you're done before we come back, go ahead and jump right on this slide. And for your group, whoever the facilitator is, jump in here and then type what was the problem of practice and what did we get from that. Clarifying questions about what we're doing.
There were several people who say they didn't see their name on a group. It's no big deal. People who
figure it
saw
out.
your name
Yeah.
on a group, you join your group. And at the end, the people who are left over will say, hey, it looks like there's not enough people in this group, join there. So you'll get to pick your group. And if you are like, well, I really can't stand being in a group with Christy, because I like Christy. Then you can be like, I'm going to accidentally pick group 5. No one's going to pay attention to that. Okay. So should we go back to the list of people?
Yeah, Andrea, if you go back to the group list, I've got breakout rooms created. So I'm going to open those up.
Oh, you have them created. Okay.
Yep. And if you can just take yourself to your group number. If you're not on this page, just hang back and we'll figure out a good place.
Yeah.
Clarifying questions? Yeah, I'm going to put the slides in the chat again. Absolutely. Give me one second.
I'm seeing open all rooms. Are they open yet, Christy?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Okay. And now they are.
Okay.
Slides are in the chat.
And then I'll reshare my screen. Hang on one second, and we can maybe start off with that piece of the slideshow and talk about some of the awesome things that I'm seeing that people wrote. Hang on, there we go. My computer doesn't really want to play along with me, so I'm taking a minute to get there. All right, So now I'm sharing my screen and all my Zoom controls are here. So I thought that I loved what some of what group 2 said about the interactive notebooks and revisiting the design projects and stuff through those interactive notebooks. That sounded like fun to me. I loved the questions from group 1 about how do we make it more equitable, and then some great answers there about storylines and pros and cons. Oops. I like these questions about increasing intrinsic motivation to do a retake. One of the things that I saw along that triggered for me an idea is that I just recently read a paper on engagement and teachers' role in student engagement and different things and strategies and things that they can think about for engagement. And so I'm going to drop that in the chat if you're interested in that article. It has a great graphic where it says like, these activities support behavioral engagement, these activities support emotional engagement, and these kinds of activities support cognitive engagement. And maybe some of those will also help with increasing the likelihood that students will engage in doing some of those retakes and redos. And then there were some great questions that group 6 put on there, and that's what triggered for me that book about. And so I was hoping maybe some folks from group 6 could give us a little more background on what some of those were. We were wondering what you meant by do retakes really help improve student grades? What are your thoughts on that? What did you mean by that?
I think we were we thought kind of ended our whole session talking about the problems with cheating, and part of that too was procrastination, that a lot of students sometimes didn't do well in the first test because they were procrastinating, so that on a retake there wasn't, in some cases there wasn't that much of improvement for students that didn't put the effort in the first time. So we were just saying that most of our experiences were that the retake didn't improve their grade that much. It may have improved the test grade, but not necessarily the overall grade.
One of the things that I tried one time about that was I said one way to prepare for the test is get a friend who passed it to come and tutor you in the room. And then I had a reward for those friends that helped them if that person did better. And so I wound up seeing these incredible like conversations where the person's like, no, it goes like this, and let me explain it this other way. And both of them came out with a deeper understanding. I found in my context that my students were really more motivated by peers than almost anything else. And so if I could engage that, get a peer to motivate you, I was 10 times more successful than anything I could say, or even a parent. Right. So if your peer is like, I get a reward if you do well, so you're going to do well because I want that reward. It was very successful for me. But there may be some other people. If other people have ideas, please feel free to unmute and add. And then because I'm sharing my screen, the updates for, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Because I'm sharing my screen, the updates for the group that added updates didn't get updated. So let me go back and reshare so that way we can see the awesome stuff that group 3 said. Although I suppose you may have even just have the slides open yourself, but whatever. So.
And when I dropped in on group 3, like I said, they were having a really rich discussion about it. I see that they're typing about it right now. And I just wanted to invite someone in group 3 to talk about that last part about the LSAT. I thought that was an excellent point. Someone want to jump in and talk about that?
I can say something about it. Just that I thought in the first article, and something that doesn't always get brought up when we have these discussions about opportunities, looking at real world versus, that there's multiple opportunities in real world. As somebody who teaches in a high poverty school and grew up in a high poverty town, and really believes that education is a huge exit ticket from multi-generational poverty, or can be, it's important to note that the equity issues around being able to take the LSAT multiple times is a thing. And so not everybody is going to have the resource to do all, to have that sort of access. And so I think that's always really important to keep in mind, and to be, transparent with our students about that. And so again, I think there's some purchase in really finding a balance between being supportive, giving them, allowing students to learn at their own speed, and also teaching them, the importance of organization and deadlines, and really finding that sort of balance. And then for them to be really transparent and aware of their personal life situation. So, yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity as well to think about using high school where the retakes, there's an opportunity cost, but the opportunity cost is not money, right? Using that as a ground to figure out, how do I do it right the first time when the opportunity cost is too much for me to bear, right? So how do I learn in high school how to study for a test like the LSAT, so that when I have a test like the LSAT, I can do it right the first time? There's definitely something in that might be helpful too, because I know you're right. It is too big of a lift for some people to do it multiple times. All right. Well, those are some great thoughts. Let's go ahead and move on. Christy?
Yeah, I'm just noticing our time. We have about 4 minutes left. So just to wrap it up here. So when we're looking at multiple opportunities, it really kind of hits all three of our pillars. It's motivating. It is, we're still continuing to just focus on the learning instead of the behavior, right? Like not penalizing students for learning it later. And it's an accurate reflection of what they know. It's not clouded and mixed up with other things that the student may or may not be learning. So it's really hitting all three. Oh, this is you, Andrea.
Oh, yeah. So I just we gave you some extra resources to look at if you want to play with this a little bit more. There's a couple books here. We've got The Grading Smarter, Not Harder by Myron Dueck. He's from Canada. He has got a bunch of cool stuff about motivating strategies and how that works with retakes. Fair Isn't Always Equal, Rick Romelli. We also have a podcast from him about assessment, retakes, redos, and some other things around that. So if you want to dive more into it, you can. And just a reminder that our next session is May 24th from 4:30 to 6. We're going to be talking about how to, start your own and get your friends to go along with you for making this evolution in grading practices. So for the homework, it's a tiered homework, depending on what you're interested in. There's a one for focusing on getting teachers and how do you do your change and how do you get your colleagues along? How do you focus on school systems and how do you convince your administrators to make this change? And then finally, we want to say, complete your exit ticket before leaving today. We'll drop that link in the chat in just a minute. And then I'm going to end the recording. Maybe stop recording.